Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the book called Kitab al-Tawwabin of Ibn Qudama rahimahullah, he quoted a story of one person by the name of Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah. Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah was a person who lived during the rule of the Abbasid ruler Al-Mahdi. He initially lived a life filled with entertainment and luxury, but subsequently repented and reformed to live a life of piety and simplicity. One day, while Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah was occupied drinking wine and enjoying the entertainment of amusement and songs, he missed performing the Dhuhr, Asr and Maghrib Salah. Whenever the Salah time set in, one of his slave girls would unsuccessfully attempt to draw his attention and alert him to the Salah. When even the time for the Isha Salah had elapsed, the slave girl finally seized a glowing ember from the fire and placed it on the leg of Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah. As soon as the glowing ember burnt his skin, Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah yelled in pain and shouted, "What are you doing?" The slave girl calmly replied, "This is an ember from the fire of this world. Will you be able to tolerate an ember from the fire of Jahannam?" When he heard the chastisement of the slave girl, he immediately began to weep profusely and stood to perform the salahs which he had missed. On completion of his salah, he began to ponder over his slave girl's statement, which had created a deep, indelible impression upon his heart. He eventually reached the conclusion that the only way to change his life and reform his condition would be for him to forego his luxuries, entertainment and wealth. He therefore freed all his slaves, released all his employees and gave all his wealth in sadaqah to support himself. He thereafter engaged in selling vegetables. It was only the slave girl who had inspired him to change his life, who now remained with him. One day Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah and Fudail ibn Iyad rahimahullah came to visit Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah. They found him resting with his head on a brick instead of a pillow and without a mattress or blanket beneath him. Noticing this state of simplicity, Sufyan rahimahullah asked, "Whenever someone abandons something for the sake of Allah Ta'ala gives him something far better in return. What has Allah Ta'ala granted you in exchange of all that you have abandoned?" Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah replied, "Happiness and contentment." Subhanallah. From this story of Abdullah ibn Marzuq rahimahullah, we learn many lessons. And the first lesson, we need to create such a bond with the salah that regardless of circumstances, whether we are attending a wedding or a funeral, or whether we feel motivated or lethargic, we will not be able to tolerate missing our salah. And the second lesson, how fortunate is that person who inspires their fellow Muslim to change his life. For as long as that person remains on guidance thereafter, the one who was the means of reformation will continue to receive the reward. And the third lesson, if there is anything in our lives that is an obstacle between us and our Creator, it prevents us from fulfilling our obligations to Allah Ta'ala and causes us to fall into sin, then we should immediately remove it from our lives. When this is done for the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala, He will most definitely grant us something far greater in exchange. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to grant all of us tawfiq and ability to practice upon this. اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى من الفعل والقول والنية والهدي إنك على كل شيء قدير.